was quite scared of coming in with this wacky idea that I was going to be looking at people's brains and how they operate. First, because we're talking to tech companies, would they be accepting? And secondly, would they believe it? Because at the end of the day, they're engineers, whether they're building a scaling company or not. I'm
Yep.
really pleased to say it does work. It definitely works. And you can see that suddenly when we have that information, we often find that the investor has made an incorrect assumption around the team. We're going to have to augment that person with this more senior person, or we're going to have to replace the CTO. Very common situations. And what we can say is, no, they need coaching post deal to step up to what you think is right for you. So I definitely say if you can know yourself, it
Yeah.
absolutely energizes the team.
Welcome, everyone, to the Tech Business Roundtable podcast show. This is a podcast show dedicated to shining a spotlight on tech innovators, entrepreneurs, founders, and the compelling narratives behind the movements they've established. I'm your host, Ryan Davies, and I'm hosting today's discussion on Tech Founders Know Thyself, Hutton Henry on personal strengths and funding success with Hutton Henry. Hutton, thanks so much for being here today.
Hi, Ryan. Thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
I am super excited for this one. We already in our pre-conversation have hit it off very well. The energy's nice and high, and I think there's just so much knowledge here, as we've already said. I think this is going to be one of but many conversations we may have together, just based on your background. But for our listeners here, Hutton is the founder CEO of Beyond M&A. Which addresses technology challenges for companies and brings a wealth of experience to the table. Early in his career, complex M&A software project imparted a crucial lesson to him. People matter more than tech. And since then, he has consistently prioritized the human element in all of his professional endeavors. His career spans beyond significant technology projects, including Ford Jaguar and HP Compaq, and in recent times has engaged with private equity investors and PE-backed firms, leveraging his specialization in technology and his love of helping people grow. I know we're going to dive into this, but you really are an expert in the inner workings of SaaS firms that are looking to attract investor interest and exit strategies, providing assessments even to the psychological levels of tech teams to help for design of diversity of thought. There is so much we're going to talk about here. Is there anything else that I can color up there, Hutton? Because I think we could do a podcast on just your intro.
I think you can come on my PR team, Ryan. That's an excellent intro. Thank you very much.
Hey, you know what? It's easy to be a hype man for somebody so strong at this, that's for sure. But I think what we should do is kind of start with a little bit more of an introduction of it, providing an overview of Beyond M&A's mission and maybe your focus on a personal level in terms of assisting SaaS and tech firms.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Ryan. So started this company a couple of years ago, but really I've been working in this field of assessing firms for investors for the last 7 years. But I take it much wider scope. I've been in technology for 30 years, and there's been this sort of interweaving piece, which is always around people. It's always fascinated me when technology projects don't deliver value or they don't deliver at all. What's the underlying problems? And it's always obviously how we interact as teams and as humans. So that's been the underlying theme. And I've been very lucky in the last 7 years to be working for the investors you mentioned, to understand and try and interpret what's happening in those technology companies and interpreting it in a way that investors understand what value they can get. So it's like being an interpreter. I absolutely love the work. It's quite it's quite an honor to be able to come in and assess a business, talk to the management, and for them to show us everything they're doing. And there's amazing things going on out there. So yeah, that's where we are.
I think that, to me, that just sounds like a dream as well. I absolutely love that idea of really going in and helping kind of get that third party view. And I know you do something different, right? There's a lot of people who go in there and they give this like, here's your technical scorecard and here's your, insert formula here, insert numbers here. Okay, here's the output, right? But you really focus on things like self-awareness for founders and
Yeah.
understand the importance and the strength of their personality and their, what they really bring to the table, their personal strength. So I'd love to talk about a little bit more on that one of, how self-awareness really helps contribute to the success of tech startups and growing tech businesses.
Yeah, definitely. So thanks. So really, yeah, I think number one, investors are much more savvy and they understand tech more than people probably understand. And secondly, I mean, every investor website will always say that they're very people centric, but how do we translate what's going on with these ones and zeros into, these humans, and how do we provide data? And as I mentioned before, I was quite interested due to some personal project failures as to why do these things go wrong, and that got me into the last sort of 7 or 8 years doing psychological assessments of the tech founders, and I'm a qualified Colby consultant, and so that is our USP in the market. Is one of them is that not only do we look at the tech and the P&L, we'll be able to look at the team and understand the diversity of thought within that company. So an example might be we worked with this amazing company in Silicon Valley, 50 people in that team, startup, building software for some very well-known firms and one of the best cultures I've ever seen. But their business problem was they weren't growing. And when we looked at the team, it was quite evident that even though they look quite different, they had all the diversity checklists done, gender, ethnicity, age, everything was there. But underneath, everyone was the same. So under stress and pressure, these people would always be going in the same direction. And we obviously know, all of us from the workplace, if we can have that diversity of thinking or thought to be challenged, it creates a better sort of creative environment. So that's the big thing. And I absolutely believe that, if I can help founders understand themselves, and just increase that self-awareness, that then increases communication, and then it has a ripple effect across the whole business. And the last thing I would add as well, as you often find, definitely in the companies we get to see, there is that interest in that self-awareness, because
Yeah.
I was quite scared of coming in with this wacky idea that I was going to be looking at people's brains and how they operate. First, because we're talking to tech companies, would they be accepting? And secondly, would they believe it? Because at the end of the day, they're engineers, whether they're building a scaling company or not. I'm
Yep.
really pleased to say it does work. It definitely works. And you can see that suddenly when we have that information, we often find that the investor has made an incorrect assumption around the team. We're going to have to augment that person with this more senior person, or we're going to have to replace the CTO. Very common situations. And what we can say is, no, 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 they need coaching post deal to step up to what you think is right for you. So, so I definitely say if you can know yourself, it
Yeah.
absolutely energizes the team. So,
Absolutely. Yeah. Does it help that I'm an 8553 in Colby? Because I have that one too. So so
very good.
now you're
Yeah,
gonna just by that, you're gonna be able to look at me and go, okay,
yeah,
now I know more
definitely. Yeah.
about them. Yeah, that
Now
see
I know how to talk with
that's why I
you.
like all of these questions. I love fact finding, right? I want to learn all the time. So
Yeah. Well,
that's my
actually, that's brilliant, because so that profile in 8553, you
yep,
said, yeah.
yep,
So I've worked with about 500 people since 2017.
yep.
And what I found within the tech teams is most of the profiles are like an 8.6 and then low numbers for it. So the first two are always like an 8.6
Mm.
to, and so but that's what I meant with that. We were hiring people, all of the native clones. So good to meet someone with a Colby profile as well. It's really exciting.
Yeah,
That's excellent.
it's big.
Yeah,
My CEO and the guy who I'm the mentors me through all of this and everything else. He
yeah,
is he loves Colby. He's into all, into it big time. So we, even when I remember when we first met, he was like, I know it's kind of weird, but can you do this so we can really, I just want to understand how, if we're going to grow together, how I should approach it, what tasks you'd be best at, and all of that kind of a thing. Right. And I mean, here we are, years later, just continuing to grow and succeed and do wonderful things and help other tech founders and everything out. And I think it's a great thing. And I think, it's incredibly important for founders and everybody really to effectively assess, like you said, and leverage those strengths in the context of building and scaling and things like that. I know you have a system, is it in terms of how to be able to effectively do that? Could you kind of help, again, don't spill your secret sauce, but maybe a way
No,
that
no,
you
no,
could kind of help
fine.
us
Fine.
understand that process a little bit more and the value behind it?
Yeah, before I jump into that, I mean, so just with your Colby, how did it help you? Because you would have that numbering system works, right? So
Yeah. And I mean, like, honestly, for me personally, what really it did for me was I've done all of like the Myers-Briggs stuff and like the
yeah,
disc scores and everything. And I'm always like, yeah, I know where I am. I'm way up here somewhere in the top quadrant. Okay, I'm, extroverted and everything like that. But this gave me a different thing beyond that of being like, there's no right or wrong, but it's just, where do you need to focus, right? Like my implementation score, low. I
yeah,
love finding out facts. I can get stuff kind of moving and the ideation stuff, but when it comes to like getting it there, and don't my wife would be the first one to say it, right? You're really great at getting a job 80 to 90% of the way done, but that's where it stops, right? So I'm like, yeah, that's true, right? It's like, yeah, I can take out the garbage, but then I don't put the bag back in, kind of thing, or whatever it is. So same sort of thought process, right? Is it helped me really understand the great, I know where I'm strong. I know that I love doing what I love doing, but it helps me identify where that gap is and where it's going to fall off, where I'm going to have trouble, right? And it allows me not to focus on the things that I'm good at, but focus on the things that I know I'm going to struggle at, and create the time and the processes. And again, I'm a big process guy, obviously, right? So can I create a process that allows me to implement better, that allows me to do those other pieces in terms of the follow through and the quick start and all of those sides of things, right? So being able to don't overpromise, and be use very specific details so that I follow through properly and all of that kind of a thing, right? So it really, really enhanced me. And again, I appreciate, I think that's why I'm so excited for this conversation, as you can tell. I appreciate the value of, okay, great, I want to, not everybody has thick skin, right? You could take it and get sensitive about it and things like that. And I think Colby does a great job of that, of being like, look, there's no right or wrong answer. It's just really reflecting on where's your strength and where is the opportunity and where do you need to focus
yeah,
to
yeah.
be successful, right? So,
And also,
yeah,
you shape the world around your strengths. That's the
right.
number one thing, right? And
Yeah,
with most of these systems, because I was quite interested. So I had an experience years and years ago where I was working on a merger. We had this software product, and it was an absolute failure. And that's what made me sort of wonder why did that happen? And it's to do with buy-in. When you merge companies together, when you invest, you've got to have buy-in from so many sides. So that was the key thing. So as you mentioned, you have to find your strengths and then use those right within your tech teams.
yeah,
Going back to your other question around process and the way it works, that is actually on one of our front web pages. So we're not secret around how we operate and the whole process, and we call it ACT, really. So we assess, challenge, and transform a business. And in the assessment piece, we obviously have to assess technology and people and processes, but that's also where we need to understand the assumptions on both sides. So if we work as an interpreter, we want to know the investor's perspective. How do they think that company is going to scale?
right.
We also want to know the founder's perspective. How do you think that the investor's going to help you?
Yeah,
Because they could be an absolute disconnect, or maybe the technology won't do what the investor has read into your information. So there is this very human aspect to it. And I often, so in terms of the process, it's very clear on our website, so that we assess, challenge, and transform. But the assessment piece, as much as it can be very data driven, it is very much around your experience in the industry and working for companies that have scaled, have
Yeah.
taken, investment. And really what we're trying to do is share that between our team and what we've seen in our careers to help the founders. So um, and I'd say the other thing that we do is we've sort of switched the focus to be on the founders, because we've realized that if we can help them first and sort of get their company ready, that's really beneficial for the investors as well.
Yeah.
And you go to you go to the investor with your most polished business, looking its best, rather than we found 10 red flags. You're not running it as well as you could be.
Right.
So I wasn't sure how that would work with investors, but they love the idea.
It,
So
I think because now you're providing value to all the stakeholders involved, right? Like it's
yeah,
really what, again, just like, and I think, well, I'd love to talk about this more, market versus the technology, right? Same sort of thing. It's about your market and the founders, not your technology and going, well, my technology works and that should be good enough, right? There's really, we hear it all the time here of, yeah, but is the market right? Are you approaching your customer properly? And are you the right person for it? We still invest in people, right? And that's a big thing. So I think, I'd love to get your take on that, because we hear it all. I've got great technology, so my business should take off. But do you feel that market is more crucial than technology when it comes to these
without a
assessments?
doubt, without a doubt. So it is a sort of a mantra within the business that market trumps tech. So
Right.
it's wonderful to be able to do our job. And that's great. We love our job. But at the end of the day, what can power a company more is a market need or a growing market, whatever the market condition is. We can really sense it when we assess a company. So, I could be talking to the most advanced. I mean, a couple of years ago, it might have been a Web3 blockchain conferencing thing, and it would be highly, highly technical. And it
Mhm.
was quite high profile. These kind of companies were very high profile then, but they're still niche in terms of market. But if you're I mean, I guess the best example is something like Waze. That market is huge, isn't it? It's just we all drive cars, and
Yeah.
and yet, that product built its own map. It was based on a community. Everything's so smart.
Yeah.
But there was um and I do like that idea, if you've heard of that, that Google, they like to, when they acquire businesses, they like to have companies that have the toothbrush model, which is you need to use it twice a day. Right. So
Yeah.
anything, yeah. So you're not having to drive your customers back to your SaaS product.
Right.
There's an incessant need for you to use a product, and people keep coming back. So there is a part of tech in that solution, but the big thing about market is, in my position, that's probably the last 7 years has taught me that market absolutely trumps tech. And when we meet the founders, they're so, like, they're really wanting to show us the intricacies of these, but we want to understand how does that translate to commercial value, but also how does that translate to potential value to a new person coming in through a round. So
Yeah, I think that makes, again, it's just so critically important to drill that point home. And again, I think that maybe helps understand maybe that value gap that you were talking about, right? For tech employees and founders just lacking that value within their business, and that gap that exists and how critical it is for success. Now, kind of pushing a little bit further here, we're talking about, maybe now how do you balance innovation and provide still business value, and that kind of that balance between
yeah.
the two, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. So it's something that we give a number to the investors. We give them a ratio. So and that's cool. There's a blog on it on our site, which is the maintenance ratio. So you're about to you're going to invest in this company, but please be aware 46% of their time will be spent on the old stuff. Keeping the lights on, keeping
Yeah.
it running. So you're only going to get, the 53 or whatever the percentage is as innovation. So we do like to show that very early in the conversations.
Amazing.
And the best founders we meet, they know that number before we meet them. They genuinely, there are some certain traits around the founders and CTOs, like the ones that know the time to value. I can still remember, the guys I've just sat there and thought, oh my gosh, I would not like to be against them in an interview process, because they're so good with their numbers. They know their team inside and out to a very analytical and mathematical position, but those numbers tell you everything about the business. Um, so, like time, for a feature to come to value, all the Dora-metric type things that go with DevOps. But the one thing, as you mentioned there, Ryan, is that ratio of maintenance versus innovation. But there's one more important thing is how much innovation does the investor really want? Because they may not want it. The investor may actually say, you know what, that piece of tech is perfect as it is. I don't want to spend any more money on that for the next 2 years. I just want to make it more commercial. So that's another factor, that it's
Yeah.
not always about innovation. Often it's about stripping it down to the most commercial value, really. So
But yeah, I think there's just so much to take away here. I think we've talked a little bit about it here, just as simple as not understanding yourself, not understanding your market or things like that. But I'd love to talk about, maybe based on your observations, what are some of those common pitfalls that tech startups, face when they're seeking funding, when they're scaling? And, just again, we've talked a little bit about the ways they can be avoided. I think it's, relying on having measurable things and experts like yourself to be able to back them, but maybe just a little bit about both of those, if there's some common areas that you see where
yeah,
it's like,
sure.
boy, this is just an area that too often could be avoided.
Yeah. I think, I would say this, right, because this is my business, but being unprepared is just this situation of pressure. So we have an ethos that you should really get your things together, your document, everything you need needs to be ready, and you can build that over time. You could do something with your team once a week for an hour, say, right, we're going to fill the data room with this amount of information. But what we see time in and time out every single time is every single team, whether it's a startup, scale up, or even beyond that, they wait until the investor says, can we check out your company? And that's the point they start to build their case.
Yeah.
Which, like we've all watched those Hollywood movies with the lawyers who stay up at night building this case of information. This is the mode that they go to for like 6 to 12 weeks, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
doing that on top of running their business, right? So the number one thing is like, start thinking about building that case beforehand. It's a very simple thing to do because no one knows your business more than you. That's the number one rule, right? Um, the second one is we talked about it a little bit, and it would be good, is that piece around value is the most common problem we see, even with very successful scale ups, is the inability to articulate value. And it's as simple as, I'm going to put, I don't know, £1 million into or dollars into this project, and I'm going to get this amount out. It's as simple as that. We often don't see it. And it's mostly because the companies can operate in their own way privately for a long time, and that's succeeded, and they've never had to justify to an external body that if I put something in, I get something out. Because in most cases, we're pivoting like crazy and we're finding that value as we go. So articulating that is honestly like company can be 15 years old in the tens of millions of revenue and they haven't got a roadmap strategy or any financial plans.
I think there's just so much great things to take away here. You've kind of helped us so much here, and I know we're already getting tight on. Like I said, we're gonna need to do a bunch of these because I think there's just so much more to uncover for our listeners. But I'd like to kind of just keep drilling a little bit further. Maybe on aligning their pitches, right? So like you said, there's pitfalls there. You don't want to have that 6 to 12 week all night living on coffee sprints sort of a thing, right? Be prepared. But I would, there's got to be some personality to your pitches. There's got to be some alignment there. Again, know who you're pitching to, that sort of thing, right? Again, know your audience, know your market, just like you do your customers. You got to know who you're pitching to. But do you have any advice, any thoughts on, aligning business strategies and the expectations and priorities of investors in today's, highly competitive funding landscape?
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, yeah, you're right. It's very competitive now, and I think you have to work harder, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, and I know you're talking a lot about AI as well, and that's a very hot topic,
Hmm.
but it's evidence, right? That's the number one thing. The use cases need to show value. And you'll hear me time in and time out say that as tech people, we are not taught enough around the term value itself. And and the more you go through the different stages of funding, the more that becomes more evident. So if you can learn that at the beginning, and then start to pique their interest around the value you're going to create, you'll get much more sort of buy-in. I mean, that's number one. Number two, I would definitely recommend, if I don't know if you've done this, Ryan, but it feels like you have, something like Toastmasters.
Yes.
Get
Yep.
these dead pitches are dead. And often when we come in and we assess the company, we get to see the pitches, and it's like, wow, how on earth did they grow that business? Because that pitch was terrible. But of course, I love the imperfection, by the way. I mean, but if they can try it out in very safe places like Toastmasters or anything like that, or even
Hmm.
with family, because the investors just need to be engaged emotionally. And the two things we would say that post deal, so pre deal, it's about preparation in many ways, but often we don't know what we're prepping for,
Yep.
so that's why we try and provide information on that. This is the areas you should be looking at. But then there's another crucial step, which is the first 6 to 12 weeks after you get your investment. Because yeah, if you're lucky, it's going to just go like wildfire,
Yeah.
right? And suddenly you're going to have more growth, more governance, more need to present. So you're going to have this accelerated need,
Yeah.
and somehow you've still got to run your business, and it's never going to be the same as the one that you were presenting to the investors. So
Yes.
how do you keep the growth going that you presented to them? And yeah, I mean, there's another side to this, isn't there, which is the investor's perspective.
Right.
So
Yeah. No, I think first of all, my first thought is so our next podcast is going to be that first 6 to 12 weeks after you've gotten your investing, because I think that could be just so, again, so incredibly valuable. Like you said, now you're resource rich when you've gone from so resource, not even
yeah,
poor, destitute,
oh
right?
yeah,
Into
yeah,
this resource rich where you're like, okay, now what? Right. And you've got expectations, you got people to answer to, all of that sort of a thing. It's incredible from that perspective. And I think, that is just a great, again, another eye opener of what to expect, and again, that level of preparation and things that need to be there, right? So um with that, I know we're kind of closing off here, but I want to kind of give you an opportunity here at the end to sort of, I was going to say, what advice do you have to ensure they're building a strong foundation? But I think, that advice really starts with surrounding them with people like yourself and understanding where they are and where their strengths lie. So maybe you can tell us a little bit more about how people can, get in contact with you and really use those resources to put them on the right track.
yeah, definitely. So we do have a number of scorecards on our website, beyond-ma.com. And I mean, really, we're providing that information so you can test yourself and look at those self-awareness aspects as well. There's a CTO scorecard as well, which I highly recommend because we've based that on the last 7 years of experience. The number one thing, and we definitely think, is there's a pattern to all of these, and um, you shouldn't be penalized for things that you can easily fix yourself.
Yeah.
That's my view. So
I,
mm, if you
I
can
love
avoid
that.
consultants, do it. That's my view. Avoid consultants wherever you can, but just and build your business because no one else knows it better than you.
Yeah. And I think that's amazing, right? It's just beyond-ma.com. You can go
Yeah.
there, take your tests, learn more, and uncover things about yourself that maybe you assume to be correct and aren't right, or areas that you could say, wow, that's a new area of focus, something I can look at. And this is stuff that just, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there when you were saying how, we get a lot of preconceived notions even about ourselves, even about our business, and that can hold us back from a personal and professional perspective. And I think this is just a wonderful tool and a wonderful way to be able to start that process and that change and really get an unbiased a look at who you are, what you're doing, and how you're going to scale and grow it and really secure that fundraising that's so critically important. So, with that, I think that's a great place to leave it for this one. Hutton, you're not
Yeah.
going to get rid of me. I promise you. You're going to
Oh,
have to.
thank you,
You're going to
Ryan.
have to do more and more of this with me because there's just so much here to unpack, and I think our listeners are going to be requesting more FaceTime with you virtually here for sure, and then hopefully in person as well. So, Hutton, I want to thank you so much for this amazing podcast and for your time today. I can't thank you enough, and our listeners are going to be indebted to you, and I'm sure reaching out as well.
Thank you, Ryan. It's been a pleasure to be here. Thanks so much.
Wonderful. So with that, thanks to Hutton Henry for this amazing podcast on tech founders. Know thyself. Hutton Henry on personal strengths and funding success. And I also want to thank our listeners as always. We can't do what we do without you. So until we meet again with another amazing TBR episode, I'm your host, Ryan Davies. Thanks and take care, everyone.